I didn't mean die. I didn't mean your cat should die. I just meant like the regular kind of, hi guys. Hi
Hi,
everybody.
guys.
Welcome to another episode of Cinema Bias. I am one of your hosts, VideoDrew, Drew Grant. And with me, as always, my lovely, beautiful, and cat-owning co-host, Alex Mack. What's up, Alex?
Cat Mama, right here. That's it. Cat Mama.
Cat Mama is a great phrase. You know what isn't? Cat Daddy. I had a friend who wrote a whole piece about how he's a cat daddy for New York Magazine. I was like, that's disgusting. Like, that makes you sound
feels
weird.
creepy.
Like
daddy. The word daddy has been manipulated into being like this kind of a sexual thing. Yeah, and
yes.
Like I've heard teens call their boyfriends daddy, and I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, no, I've heard a lot of things like that, but like that's why, there's certain people who daddy applies to, like in a hot way, and then there's the zaddy phenomenon, which is like hot daddies who aren't dads, like when you get to be
there are some very attractive fathers out there.
And non-fathers.
Non-fathers.
Guys, welcome to Cinema Bias, a show where we just talk about hot man meat. So guys, our Streamlabs are open tonight, streamlabs.com/VideoDrew. I see our producer Sean in the background just rolling his head in his hands. We have a very special guest joining us tonight. But first, Alex, why don't we talk a little bit about what this show is? What is Cinema Bias?
Guys, what is Cinema Bias? Oh my gosh, let me tell you, okay? Cinema Bias is a show where Drew and I watch movies one of us hasn't seen and one of us has, where we introduce movies to each other and check out movies that are kind of outside our comfort zone, movies that challenge us. And as a result, we're trying to check out new movies outside of our favorite genres or favorite directors, because let's face it, everyone has movie biases, whether we think about it or not, whether we have a favorite movie genre, a favorite director, an actor, and sometimes, if you're like me, sometimes you might altogether avoid a category of films. And so thankfully shows like this is really all about breaking down those biases
and making yourself watch movies that you don't want to watch.
Yeah. That's not, because those biases aren't good. You can't be a true movie fan and have these biases, right?
I've now watched Studio Ghibli, and I watched Lawrence of Arabia today. I didn't want to do that. I just did it. I did it for you guys.
You watched Lawrence of Arabia?
And by you guys, I mean I did it because I wanted to understand the reference in Prometheus. But yes, let's just say for you guys, I did watch Lawrence of Arabia. Guys, so that's a great explanation of Cinema Bias. I would say, my bias, my outlook has changed a lot since we started this podcast almost a year ago. But this is a movie we picked tonight. We try to cycle it off. It's like me, my pick, Alex's pick. Then we try to have a Patreon pick, which, by the way, guys, if you go to patreon.com/VideoDrew, we have some new tiers set up, and anyone within, I think, the $10 tier, we've moved everything around. So now you can, for the $10 tier, I think, get a Cinema Bias episode where you come on and talk to us and pick a movie. Then we always try to do one with a special guest who picks a movie for us to watch. And this week, we're very excited to have my current manager from the dungeon, Kaiser, joining us. Hey, Kaiser.
Whoa. You got some bad lighting.
Me?
Me, not you. This is as good as it's gonna get. This is as good as it's gonna get. Okay. I give this movie 1, 2, 3. 4 toothpicks.
Wow, is that the standard? Are we doing 4 toothpicks?
4 toothpicks.
I feel a lot less cool right now.
You can't get any better than 4 toothpicks. Running scared is 4 toothpicks on the Kaiser meter.
This is very on cinema of you, Kaiser. By the way, Kaiser, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited about life. Yeah, that sounds like a thing that everyone should be right now. Excited about life.
You gotta be excited about life.
My red room, my Black Lodge I have going on here. It's intense.
It's like a full-on fucking red room.
Kaiser, I've got to get your address because I have a bunch of Twin Peaks posters and pins and cool shit that I just bought on this Chinese drop site, and I have 1,000 Twin Peaks things now that I just have nothing to do with. So send me your address.
Very on brand.
What does Chinese drop site mean?
Okay, so drop sites are like sites like Wish or AliExpress where they don't actually have the goods at like some warehouse somewhere, but they get your order in and then they buy from like a third party. So the drop site is just like the site where you get the stuff for cheap, but then it like goes and gets it from some other place.
I'll move some shit around. I'll put up a Twin Peaks. You can't see it's all dark back there, but I got the Warriors, the Japanese version.
Oh, I'm gonna send you the most Leland poster ever.
Well, anyone who knows me and Drew's managerialship, friendship, relationship, we're both two of the biggest diehard Twin Peaks fans on the planet. I'd say Drew is the biggest Twin Peaks fan. I think I cracked the top 10 because I've often said that Twin Peaks is my favorite anything, movie, television, anything. But we're here to talk about a movie that I recommended.
Thanks for getting us back on track.
I recommended this movie because if anyone knows me, my entire life is an 80s buddy comedy. Everything I've ever done in my life has been handled this way.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because I was talking about this movie with some people in C2A and the Cold Action podcast crew. And we were talking, and I mentioned, okay, this week we're going to be talking about Running Scared. And several of them said like, oh my gosh, that is the perfect Kaiser movie. And I was like, is it? Because at that point I had not seen it. And now after watching it.
Perfect 80s buddy comedy.
It's definitely in the conversation for sure. Is it the buddy comedy of all time? I'm not entirely sure.
No. 48 Hours is the greatest buddy cop movie of all time. This movie feels like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid if they lived in Chicago during the Reagan administration. That's what this movie is.
Yeah, I was very confused for a while. I was like, does this take place in Giuliani's New York? Until I realized it was Chicago. Because this is very like Giuliani New York behavior.
Listen, I think in the 80s, 87% of all buddy cop movies were shot in Chicago. You could probably call AFI, have them crunch the numbers.
They're probably actually shot there, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say 87% of every buddy cop movie. It was probably a mandate. You had to shoot there. But
yeah, I was going to say New York you couldn't shoot in, but a lot of movies should take place in New York. They just don't shoot there.
Well, look, you got Billy Crystal's running around with a tucked-in Chicago Blackhawks jersey. That's about the most 80 thing I've seen in this movie, other than Gregory Hines wearing the half top or the crop top, the half shirt when he's down in Key West when they're thinking about buying a bar.
There's a lot there.
80s wardrobe choice, other than tucking in the Blackhawks jersey. The half shirt is the next biggest piece.
Do you remember the white pants and like the flamenco shirt situation?
I will say that there's a part of this movie that it was so Chicago that I was like, wait, did John Hughes write this? Like it was like Chicago that I was like, is this maybe like in the Uncle Buck universe, like extended universe? Like I can't tell. It just seemed.
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead.
Well, I did want to kind of ask specifically, what's your bias? Why did you make us watch this movie, Kaiser?
I'm going to tell you straight up. When Drew said it's got to be a movie we haven't seen, and my knee-jerk reaction was, "Have you seen Running Scared?" And she said no, and I said, "Well, then that's the movie." It was like a matter of, it was like the Big Bang, right? It happened in a fraction of a second, and here we are.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't hesitate to say, which movie haven't you seen? Instead, and he just knew somehow that we have not seen Running Scared. Now, why do you think that is? What do you assume our bias is, Kaiser?
I mean, it's a very dad dude movie. Like you got to be, usually if you're watching this movie, you're one of two things, a dad or a dude. And like you guys can hang with dudes. I mean, you're dudettes. So I feel like that's why you both would enjoy this film. Drew, I figured you would appreciate a lot of the writing because there's some fantastic one-liners. It's very unique. It's got its own sort of language that is fun, and it still manages to find originality in a genre that can be a little saturated. You know, Alex, you're a little younger, but I mean, I know that I think, you know, I don't think this would be your kind of movie off the jump. Like if it was on TBS, you'd probably flip it. But then maybe though, after 15 minutes, you got hooked by, you know, Billy Crystal's charm. And, you know, Gregory Hines just looks like a freaking It's like, you forget that Gregory Hines is a dancer. He's not even an actor.
No, wait, I didn't forget that. I was just like, wait, Gregory Hines the dancer? I still think of him as Gregory Hines the dancer.
Yeah. Wasn't he in Cotton Club as well?
He was in a bunch of stuff. He's kind of like Ben Vereen. Like, he just was in a lot of stuff. NerdChronic
way doper than Ben Vereen.
I love Ben Vereen. Gregory Hines looks just like the dude from Ghost, who like helps him like in the subway. The other ghost, what's that actor's name? He's like that really tall dude. He looks just like Vincent Schiavelli. Do you guys remember that guy? That really tall, weird looking dude. Anyway, guys, we want to talk though about maybe why Alex and I haven't seen it.
Alex said she was going to devastate me with her comeback on my perception of how she was going to view this film.
Well, yeah. Well, Alex, what was your bias?
Well, my bias was one, I wasn't born yet.
Right.
There's a lot of movies in particular from the 80s that my mom wasn't really big into movies all that much outside of the occasional crime movie, because we had a lot of mother-daughter movies included Silence of the Lambs, American Psycho. That was a big mother-daughter movie.
American Psycho was a big mother-daughter movie.
She's got some weird shit in her life, man.
Yeah,
I think that's a good move. I'd be like, darling, these people exist in the world, and you should take karate so that if a guy comes at you with an axe playing Huey Lewis, you know how to handle yourself.
Well, the reason is because when I was in late grade school and middle school, I was actually part of my mom's book club. And that included reading the Hannibal Lecter series. And they also read and this is like when my mom was also in med school. So we also read American Psycho. I was in 6th grade when I read American Psycho, not really fully understanding
really
in total.
That's a really fucked up book. American Psycho is a really there's parts that I read the book. It's horrifying and violent and obscene. It's upsetting.
Yeah, I read it. I still love the book. I didn't fully understand the book.
You like the part where Patrick Bateman dissolves a woman's nether regions with sulfuric acid and shoves up a hamster wheel inside of her and releases live rodents, because that's not cool. That was a really fucked up part of the book.
I'm aware it is. It was just when we talked about it when I was younger, I feel like I don't want this to take over the whole episode.
Yeah,
obviously it was just more about the feminist aspects of the books, and also and how the movie is in many ways a very feminist film.
Yeah,
and that a lot of people really do not realize it, or did not realize at the time upon initial viewing, because a lot of people say it's still a very anti-feminist film.
Well, those people,
but again, a conversation for another day. But
now, what did you think about? So overall, how many toothpicks did you give it?
Well, we're gonna get to that in a second.
I would probably give it a solid 2.5, 3 toothpicks personally.
Toothpicks.
Oh my gosh!
Out of how many toothpicks?
4. For going
okay. 2.5, I think?
Yeah, 2.5, 3 toothpicks.
You gotta pick one. It's either 2.5 or 3. It's
okay, so let's give it 3.
All right, 3.
We'll give it 3.
I got you.
Also, Billy Crystal is so fucking hot in this movie.
It is. He's got a weird hot.
Goddamn good in this movie, isn't he?
Everybody in this movie got some weird hot.
Yeah, he's riding around on a scooter without his shirt West.
I've never been attracted to Billy Crystal before ever, and suddenly I was like, "Oh!"
As a cop,
I was attracted to Joey Pantoliano in this movie, that weird guy from The Matrix.
Joey Pants.
Joey Pants was so hot in this
stole
movie.
The entire first act.
So good.
This whole cast is incredible if you break it down. You got all of it, 5'2" Billy Crystal just walking off the stage at some stand-up fucking joint. He got famous on that TV show Soap. And here he is playing a borderline action hero. And then you got Gregory Hines, a professional dancer. It is the most untypical macho dudes of this era. You normally they're the anti-Arnolds. Yeah. This isn't Cobra. Yeah. This isn't Raw Deal. This is just to me, this is where, what makes a good buddy cop movie work, when they don't look like they were shooting steroids into each other's ass before the movie. There was something really believable about these guys playing these parts. And I'm telling you, the dialogue flies off the fucking page, whoever wrote this screenplay.
Well, I think there's something interesting to be said there about like there's the two other cops they have in there, the two cops that are kind of replacing them, kind of
My
look
buddy
like
Stephen
right.
Bauer. That's my buddy
Yeah.
Stephen Bauer, who played Manny in Scarface.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
dude used to fucking crash on my couch.
And the other dude, oh really? That's really
Yeah,
funny.
dude.
The other dude is
He's a
Uncle
buddy
Rico.
of mine, dude. I'm telling you, the first time we met, it didn't go so well. We had words because he tried hitting on my girl at this fucking after hours karaoke bar.
Wait, the guy with the long hair?
Yeah, the guy with the long. He played Manny in Scarface. I said, if you touch her again, I'm gonna break your fucking arm. I don't care if you were in Scarface.
Oh my god!
But then he ended up crashing at my place and we became buddies. I went to his, 50th, 60th, one of his birthdays.
Oh my god!
But anyway, Stephen Bauer, I love. He's a phenomenal actor. He plays, you got Jimmy Smits is the heavy. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy Smits playing Julio is so money.
Or as NerdChronic goes, oh, is that blah 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 from Star Wars? And I was like, I don't know who blah 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 is
the
from
guy
Star Wars. And I was like, oh yeah, Jimmy Smits is in Star Wars, you nerd.
That's the guy who hid Princess Leia from Darth Maul or whatever.
I don't remember him being in Star Wars, but that's because I'm not a nerd.
You got Nick Tortelli, Carla's husband from Cheers. What's his name? The disgruntled police chief.
Oh, Dan Hedaya. Dan Hedaya.
That dude's the fucking best.
Dan Hedaya.
This is this guy at the top of his form in a movie like this.
I think that and Joe versus Volcano is Dan Hedaya at his
Joe versus the Volcano. We should do that movies. I remember going to the movies. Me and my buddy brought two girls to the movie. They walked out. We were like, fuck, we're going to stay and watch this. I remember seeing that as a kid and thinking that was the coolest movie and everybody hated it. But
I love that. But well, real quick, let me just get to my bias. And how many toothpicks I give it, I guess. And then me and Alex are going to try to give it a quick summary of what this movie is about, and then we'll get more to it. My bias is that like it's weird that I didn't see this movie. This does seem like a movie that would have caught like my eye. Like I don't know exactly what year it came out, but I saw most of these. The fact
that Peggy just said a brain cloud, I'm drafting her just on that. Okay, sorry, go ahead. She was doing a Joe versus the Volcano reference.
I mean, the brain cloud. Yeah, exactly. I love Joe versus.
She fucking knows that.
I told you I was a Flipperty Gibbet. I love Meg Ryan.
Flipperty Gibbet. Oh my god, Drew.
So. I don't know why I missed it, but like it's not. It seems like my kind of movie. As Alex wrote today, she was like, "I can't believe an R-rated movie was funny," and I was like, "That's."
I was
like
kidding.
You were kidding.
R-rated movies can be funny.
I feel like those are most funny movies, though. So I was allowed to watch a lot of really messed up movies. When I was a kid.
You can use the word "fuck" is automatically funnier than any movie that can't use the word "fuck."
Absolutely.
Come on.
I watched a lot of these movies when I was a kid. This one, like, just totally passed me by. I think it's one of those movies, though, that, like, slips into a crack of, like, 80 movies that, like, you're right, buddy cop movies aren't exactly my cup of tea. I like some of them, but, like, they're, as we'll talk about, I'm sure, later, like, cop movies are not, buddy cop movies right now have, like, a weird kind of connotation when you watch it with today's glaze. And I think that's interesting. I would actually give this movie, I'm so sorry, I would give this movie, like 1.5, 2 toothpicks. No disrespect.
There is a bulletproof taxi in this movie.
I know.
Bulletproof taxi that has a car chase on fucking train tracks.
It's
that
not
alone
that it's not funny.
2 toothpicks.
It's not that it's not funny. There's the stuff about pacing and there's stuff about like other stuff in there that I just found it a little weird. But like, you know what? Let's get into our next segment before we go into this movie any further, because I'm sure we're gonna have some strong.
Michael McDonald is on the soundtrack.
I mean, this is a good soundtrack.
Well, real quickly, I do want to point out the writer of the movie. There's actually 2 writers. Credited writers. One of them is Gary DeVore, and you might recognize him for doing some stuff. He did like Raw Deal.
Oh wow! Okay.
He did a few other like TV shows, stuff like that. Jimmy Houston. He was
probably
also
did a few Fall Guy episodes, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So
maybe T.J. Hooker.
Dogs of War, Back Roads. Not entirely sure. The Relic, Sudden Death. He was actually uncredited. He was uncredited for being involved in Time Cop.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the director, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He was one of the screenwriters.
Who was the director?
The other one, he did mostly a handful of TV movies. Jimmy Houston. He did Final Exam. He did The Wharf Rat. I'm not sure what Dark Sunday.
The Wharf Rat, huh? That
The
sounds like
Wharf
Peter
Rat. My
Haynes
best friend is a vampire.
Peter
Death Diver,
Hyams.
Dark Sunday.
Peter what now?
Peter Hyams is the director. It's the same
Hyams,
guy.
right. And he did direct Time Cop, didn't he?
Yeah. And he did like Capricorn 1 and Sudden Death.
2010.
Time Cop. Yeah, he did Time Cop. He did the sequel to 2001 Space Odyssey. Yeah.
Trippy,
Yeah.
man.
Crazy.
Ugh.
Listen, the buddy cop genre is sacred.
Mhm.
Okay. And I gotta say, 48 Hours is the best. But not that this movie's a buddy cop movie, but it's similar in that it's buddy crime, buddy on the run.
Absolutely is a buddy cop movie.
No, a different one I'm about to cite, Silver Streak. I think that's when these kinds of buddy movies open up big, is with like Silver Streak, I think came out in 76. That's Gene Wilder and that's Richard Pryor. Now, those guys aren't your typical, like, guys you would normally watch on the run in a movie. At that time, it was probably like Charles Bronson and Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Lee Marvin or some shit was on the run, or being chased or chasing someone, a thriller, if you will, a buddy thriller. Then comes Gene Wilder and fucking Richard Pryor, who might as well have been a rock star at that point in time. Like, Richard Pryor becomes one of the most bankable actors in Hollywood in the 70s. Gene Wilder's on top of his game, and they make this buddy movie. I think because of that movie, you start to see this like surge of these types of films in the 80s with 48 Hours, Midnight Run, and to me, I think they are such dude movies that Tango and Cash, exactly. Like these, and I think what I love about especially good ones is it's the screenplay. They're well written. I mean, dialogue is flying off the page in this. Let me just give you a couple one-liners. In this neighborhood, a Mercedes is probable cause. That's a great fucking line, right? Mm-hmm. My favorite is when the guy has jumped off the building. There's an apparent suicide, and Billy Crystal shows up on set. He sees the traffic cop we can't stand. He says, "Oh, my favorite traffic cop. Did you give the jumper a ticket for loitering yet?"
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Those lines are
It's a good line.
Incredible. And it's that, and for me, script is everything. So when these guys are just making these lines count and they're whipping through it, it to me just makes for a richer film, other than just guys getting punched in the face for 2 hours.
It definitely had some great one-liners. And I want to get to me and Alex sort of describing the plot for you, John, and you'd have to tell us how good we did in a span of 60 seconds. So I want to get to that before we start diving into this more. But there's a lot of things here. I think some of my issue with this film, we can talk about later, is just sort of like the subject seems a lot darker than the dialogue, or like what they're doing seems so much darker than like what they're doing. Right. They're being silly and stuff. And I'm like, but they're like actively shooting and killing people. So.
It was this like for this movie.
Drew, that's a valid point, Drew. That's a valid point.
The thing is it is played off like a really dark crime comedy, which is that's really great.
It was the 80s.
At the same time, I wonder how much of it is because of the lines, the really, really great funny script, or how much of it is actually because of the delivery with these actors. Like, would this movie have the same tone if it was literally anyone else other than Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal? Like, I don't know. And I really want to get these roles together, and they just bounce off each other so well.
I definitely had some thoughts about that, and like let's do that after we put the timer on the clock, Sean, because I definitely had some thoughts about who else could have been in this movie and what this would have looked like. So we're gonna put 6 seconds on the clock. So Alex, you want to take this one? 60 seconds on the clock to describe the plot of this movie.
Cool.
See if you can do it.
Let's do it. All right, let's try it.
And then, all right, we have to tell her how well she did.
All right, I'm not gonna go into the actors' specific names because I don't remember. I'll give you actors. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, go. All right. So Hines, it's like Gregory Hines, aka I think he's Ray, and Billy Crystal. There are these two detectives based in somewhere in Chicago. They're known for being kind of these asshole cops, dude. They have unorthodox methods in order to get evidence and like kind of manipulate suspects and everything in order to kind of get to their ending, right? Okay, so they just were casually hanging out somewhere or trying to. I don't know what they were doing exactly, but they ends up like casually running into a drug dealer that was in the area. His name is Julio, played by it's absolutely beautiful Jimmy Smits. Is he gorgeous? Absolutely. But that ends up being being a huge money being transferred. They end up being taken over. They end up going over to Key West. I completely lost it. I just got caught up. I don't know. I'm not.
QS was in there. Okay.
I didn't get to say anything about the plot.
Give me the 60 seconds. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to see if I can figure it out. I'm going to stop.
Pick up where I left off.
Okay.
Which is outside like the opening scene.
I mean, you were on a roll. You were on a roll.
You were on a with anything I said.
Okay, let's get it up, Sean. Let me see if I can do it. Because I feel like I got a good handle on this. Maybe until like the last act.
Girl, you got it.
Hold on, Sean's putting up the.
You got hung up by Jimmy Smits for about 15 seconds.
He's just so attractive.
So hot. He is so freaking hot in this movie.
He's like distracting.
This entire cast, top to bottom, is elite for an 80s cop comedy.
Sean, do you have the timer again, Sean?
It was distracting how attractive he was.
The drug dealers in Chicago must be good looking.
I mean. Okay, so hold on. Let me put it on my phone. Then I'll give myself 60 seconds, and I'll see if I can do it.
I can think of a few cities where the drug dealers probably aren't so good looking.
Okay, let's see. I got it on my phone.
Washington.
Oh, look, we got a little donation. Let's see. Hamstrack donated a super chat, $20, saying you don't have to read this, just chipping in some burger money. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna read it anyway.
This man is throwing in burger money. He's a dungeon head.
Thank you, guys. If you want to of course. Make sure that to put it on the Streamlabs if you do want yourself read out loud. So here, I'm gonna give. Oh, here we go.
I could go for a cheeseburger after that.
Yeah, really?
Had it.
My man Hamstrack. Here we go. She was on the clock.
Okay, Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal ends up inheriting $40,000 from his dead aunt.
$50,000.
Stop. Okay, so that's what.
Trivia question. You're gonna need to know that.
The other guy had. He got $40,000. So he goes to Key West. He tries to get Gregory Hines to invest in a bar down south with him. But basically, when they go to give their 1 week notice back in Chicago, the guy that they thought they had put away is still out on bail, and he's smuggling Uzis and cocaine into the country. So they kind of have to go through this madcap adventure. They get in trouble, and so they get put on their tail with two younger versions, kind of like younger versions of themselves. One's played by Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite, and the other apparently tried to sleep with Kaiser's girlfriend. They end up in this big thing. Billy Crystal and his estranged ex-wife, his ex-wife gets kidnapped. He goes to find her. It's this big shootout in this sort of like mall area on elevators. They fall back in love. At the end, they're sort of like, they kind of freeze frame, like talking about like going to Key West again, even though that never got brought up again. They freeze frame and they're like, yeah.
I think you guys both nailed it. I mean, if you sew those two reviews together, they're pretty spot on. They're pretty spot on.
$50,000 was how much money Joey Pants had. $40,000 was how much he inherited.
Oh, I see. Good catch. Good catch.
Yeah.
50,000.
That's why she's a competitor.
50,000. That was Joey Pants' character. That
was Joey Pants' money. So what do we miss?
You're gonna need to know that for an 8-point question. What was Joey Pants' character's name in Running Scared? Snake.
Yeah. Right. Wait, Kaiser, what did we miss, though? What do you think are some big, any plot points or anything that we missed in this?
Well, look, you forgot one of the biggest. This is what if you don't have this plot point in this movie, it can't happen. Like it's like a gumbo. You got to have the exact recipe for it to be perfect. And you forgot to mention that his wife wants to get a divorce. But at the end, he's got to save her in a shootout. Like, that's got to happen in this movie.
He wants to save her in a divorce, but he hates her new husband.
Hold the phone. They were already divorced.
Almost.
They were already divorced, and their chemistry. Yo, was I just reading into it way too much? But I was like, there's some.
They looked like they were banging
here,
they were banging. I'm
like,
I don't know. She was the
when they were hanging out in that bar, that felt like a real bar. Like, it didn't feel like a movie set. Everything that was going on in that movie
felt like it, like they were just
staged
trying
as even like those like street basketball games are, and people getting punched in the face. And he goes. When the guy punched Billy Crystal in the face, he goes, "Is that a foul?" He goes, "No, it's not a foul unless you file an autopsy." Like again, the one-liners are just fucking flying off the page. No, there's just there was look. It got silly. Of course, here's another thing that has to happen in this movie. Someone has to fall 13 floors to their death into a bunch of packages, a bunch of Christmas presents in the lobby, because all these movies take place during Christmas time. So, like, again, another key ingredient to this film you're forgetting: bad guys falling to their death 13 stories below.
Bad guys get Home Alone, but for real.
Yeah. No, you've got an office building shootout. That has to happen. I mean, all these, like you said it already, Drew, the rival buddy cops who they're going to butt heads with the entire movie, but then they're going to help them in the shootout at the end, and everyone's going to high five and smoke a cigar. Freeze frame. Let's make a deal. Let's sell this movie for $1 trillion in 1986.
Now let me ask you.
I do think that
it did come out in 86, right?
Yeah, but
it did come out in 86. This movie, I do think there was something in the chat. Peggy Gubbin said it always comes down to a love story. It always comes down to a love story. Fight me. And I definitely agree. It's a love story between Ray Hughes and Danny Costanzo. This is a serious love between these
real.
two men.
In Die Hard, you give way more of a fuck. You give way more of a fuck about John McClane and Holly getting back together than you do that German piece of shit Alan Rickman getting thrown off the building.
Oh no, that's a strong disagree. I care so much more about what happened to Gruber's life than I care about.
He's going to get smoked either way. I really care if he gets his wife back. That's what the movie's all about. The movie's all about him getting his wife back. That's what the movie's about.
Do you think this movie is like that too?
But it's
no, I think this movie's a little different because he came into the movie in Die Hard. He came into the movie with the intention of getting his wife back, and then it just got submarined by a bunch of terrorists, and then
it's an action.
He had to get through that little thing.
They were just bank robbers pretending to be terrorists.
Fair enough. You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have labeled them terrorists. They were bank robbers. Terrorists. Right. The Asian Dawn or whatever the hell. The 16 names he lists off that he read in Time magazine.
I want to say that, Alex, I think, your point, this is a bromance kind of movie. There was one scene that like made me like be like, ooh. And like, I was like, this is the kind of movie that was like, where even the female characters are written by dudes because because Gregory Hines goes home with a woman. The next day,
he's just counting cash in a Walter Payton half shirt. Like, how big of a study?
It looks like what Gucci would wear. Honestly, this looks like a Gucci
catalog.
Just like Gucci. That's kind of ridiculous. Either one of them.
This is 100% a Gucci movie.
This is a Gucci film. But tell me about the scene. Like, let's talk about the scene where literally Billy Crystal, without knocking, just the next morning after his partner brings home a woman, he just walks into his apartment while the woman is naked under the bed, sits down on the bed, starts eating Dunkin' Donuts, and asks, like, right in front of her, was she good? To Gregory Hines, and she goes, well, was I? Yeah. And I was like, that's not a normal response. Her response would not be like, well, was I? It would be, get the fuck out of my fucking plate. Like, get the fuck out of here. And women keep acting like that in the film. Like, it's charming that these cops keep busting in and saying these horrible things to them.
Yeah, well, Chicago and apparently whatever part of Chicago they were shooting in is very sleazy. It's kind of like the French Connection. Like, everything's just sleazy. So once you kind of give into that a little bit,
they're very confident in their sexuality.
Well, look, these movies all have shades of classic film noir. They're just kind of coked up a little bit per the decade it was shot in. You know what I mean? Like, these movies are like coked up film noirs is basically what they are.
Yeah, and they're like and film noirs being specifically this sort of like West Coast sort of like aimless getting hired by a woman. This is like, the cop thing is a little bit different. Detective cops even are a little bit different than like the private detective genre. Sure. But I do think there is a lot of this mystery of here. This movie, not so much mystery, but it's sort of like, you start out with this Joey Pantalones character, great character.
His aunt's funeral. Now, when a cop takes the fucking fugitive to the funeral, that's just a great scene. Like, from a writing standpoint, if I'm a screenwriter, I'm like, this shit is gold.
Yes, and I think when I talk about the tonal shifts that like kind of were disconcerting in this movie, I'm talking about the stuff that like Joey Pantalone seems like that kind of trope of like the bad guy or the secondary bad guy who they bring along to so many of their own events that they start commiserating and he starts becoming one of them. You know, it's one of those things, you know, almost like fun Stockholms, you could call it.
Well, it's the same thing they did in Lethal Weapon with what's his name, Pesci.
Yeah, exactly. But in this movie, it's sort of like, no, Joe Pantalones is still like so hard to kill them. Like, is so looking forward to like killing them. And it's like, wait, I thought you guys bonded. Like, what happened?
It's great how he just doesn't drift into like tertiary tough guy, bad guy character.
He's so good. What a great character he is.
He's so relevant like, throughout the whole first act, you know?
He's a great character. I think Jimmy Smits, who's like, you know, could have just been this sort of stock character of like this, you know, whatever bad guy. But he's got a lot of stuff going on here. Like I really like what they did with Jimmy Smits' character. He's not just like a perfunctory bad guy. He's not even like a Hans Gruber style bad guy, but he is sort of like, he's got this sort of like you know, when you meet him with the nun and the priest, it just seems like, you know, he's got like the sweetness to him almost. And I gotta say, another trope I really like is when the bad guy gives like a legitimate chance out, and you can tell the bad guy just wants to do something other than deal with those people. Like there's a trope where it's like the bad guy just being like, "Please just get the fuck out of my face." And there's a lot of that in this movie. Jimmy Smits being like, "Here, I bought the deed to your look. I went all the other way. I found out what bar you're gonna buy. I will buy out your mortgage if you just leave me the fuck alone."
And that's a good offer.
It's a great offer.
Hines is like, you know what? I'm not rich. I didn't have a rich aunt. You know, you need to think about it for a minute.
Yeah, that's definitely offers a little perspective. Well, something I'm kind of curious about is that Kaiser, these characters, they're charismatic, they're funny. Do you think that it could have been almost like completely swapped? Do you think this could have been, the characters could have easily been written as actual criminals rather than cops, and the movie be just as successful overall?
Do I think
like if it was almost like SWAT, like Jimmy Smits, like he's the drug dealer in this movie, and you know, and he's the drug dealer.
I bet he could have played the fuck out of that Hines character. I bet Jimmy Smits is versatile enough.
I'm a little confused, Alex. Are you asking as if the characters were the same like they say acted like the same characters, but they were just the bad guys instead of the good guys?
Exactly. Right. Like so okay, in this case, what if the drug dealer Julio and Snake, what if they were actually the cops? And because honestly, I mean, let's be honest, I mean, they're cops, they're very charismatic, they break rules all the time. They're not good cops. They don't follow their own rules.
I think what you're talking about is like a gritty John Cassavetes movie.
I think what she's talking about is Protocol New Orleans. She's talking about like Bad Lieutenant. I think what she's saying is this is kind of like a Bad Lieutenant style movie. They don't go quite that far, but there's definitely some times in this movie where they just shoot people. Like they just shoot people and they're like, yeah, we shot people. And you're like, wait.
Like they've been shooting people in movies since the fucking 20s. So what are you talking about?
I mean, like these cops, you have to understand that like there's some scenes in this movie where no one's opened fire on them and they just start opening fire on.
Hey man, you ever seen a Henry Melville? You ever seen a Henry Melville film, bro? They be shooting everybody in those French gangster movies.
Those are not comedies.
Sometimes they are. But you're right. For the most part, they're pretty goddamn tight-lipped, straight-lipped.
You know, like, and these are supposed to be likable characters.
I think you have two of the most likable human beings working in cinema at this period of time. Like,
go back shot to that picture.
Billy Crystal and his delivery is fucking just flawless. Like, you've got a comedian driving this whip smart dialogue, and I'm sure he's improvising as he goes along. And Hines is just the perfect fucking guy for, I think, Billy to improv with. Like, he's just so cool at being the straight man. You know, Hines is more or less the straight man here, and it works. Yeah. It really works. Hines is smooth, and like, he's funny when he's not trying to be funny, and Billy's funny when he's supposed to be funny. That's kind of the dynamic of these things. I mean, you have the right to remain dead, is what he said to him when he put the gun in his nose.
Let's face it, they could totally be alive if it wasn't for Ray and Danny.
I mean, a lot. Ray and Danny mess up a lot of these things. They mess up the undercover operation. They mess up, like, I get the sense that, like, if this was Breaking Bad territory, they wouldn't necessarily be the good cops. They aren't, like, they kind of have the, you know, we did find that they do kind of have the dynamic of Hank from Breaking Bad and his partner. What was that partner? Gomez? Like, that's like their kind of dynamic, because they're almost like always talking about stuff that's sort of like, they're just like, they're doing their job, but then they're also like, hey, you want to go get a bagel? You want to get a bite? They're like, no, that's a silly, they're having side conversations that are don't really have to do that much. Like they're just
Promise me
around
you'll
having
get
fun.
mugged a lot.
Yeah.
And how about when he wants to buy the bar? He's trying to convince Gregory Hines in Key West to buy the bar. And Hines is like, I like being a cop. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's going to be just like being a cop. We'll break up some fights. We'll argue with some drunks. And hopefully every month or so we'll get robbed. Like,
yeah, he's like, you promise we're going to get robbed?
That shit to me is just undeniable. And like, you have to have someone like an Eddie Murphy or Billy Crystal or that caliber of comedian actor delivering that stuff for it to really fly off the page and hit home. And I think that's why movies like Beverly Hills Cop and movies like this absolutely work. And they're going to always be considered treasures of this dude film sort of genre forever. Like, I think you could look at 80s buddy cop movies the same way you could look at French gangster films, at least that they're in their own sort of category, you know what I mean? And so
right. The gangsters and cops in this in that era were sort of interchangeable. They were just supposed to be cool. They weren't supposed to be statements about actual cops or actual gangsters.
That's right. A lot of that film noir, all those film noirs, a lot of the lines were blurred. Killing, obviously, everybody's a bad guy. What's the Hemingway story that Lee Marvin and Clu Gulager? I was just talking to fucking Oyama about this movie. The Killers. Everybody's a bad guy. You know what I mean?
But I think there's a difference between being a private detective, which is what you are in film noirs, and being somebody who's on the force. Because the force represents and again, this is just, and I know, Alex, I was like, let's not talk about this until we put it in context near the end. But like now I can't seem to help it. And there's hard things to do when you take the gaze of today and try to apply it to cop movies from back then. Because you're just almost like, no, don't. Like, no, that's why is no one
it's a popcorn film at the end of the day. Let's be real. Like if you know, it's as fun as video games, man. That's kind of what I would equate the experience to.
At one point, NerdChronic came out, left the room, came back in, and he was like, and he was trying to do one of these things, I think, where he was sort of like, this movie's ridiculous. Where he goes, oh, they all have Uzis now? And I go, no, the Uzis were established. They were all breaking in the Uzis.
They're not just flopping them around. Like, the guy, that man is smuggling Uzis. That's part of his trade.
Uzis and terrible cocaine, which I thought was a great bit. Like that, this cocaine is shit, and he's like, "You mean the shit?" And he's like, "No, just shit. This cocaine is shit. There's barely enough cocaine in here."
Dogs can barely.
That was great. Whoever was the costume designer just nailed it. I mean, they really crushed the gear that everyone was wearing.
Except, I find it funny that Billy Crystal never fails outside of Princess Bride, of course. He always wears a New York Mets ball cap, and you actually see he actually sneaks one in here, but he does think he does one in New York, but he turns it around. He turns it around, and you don't see the logo. It's like a backwards blue cap, but if you see it starting on a gold, so you're like, I see what you did there.
He's a New York boy through and through, that's for sure.
I do want to talk about some of the best lines in this movie, if we want to go there, because I forgot that there were some really good ones in here. Where they're calling backup when it's just them and the other two guys, and they're breaking into the house. And he goes, "I'm calling." He's like, "I'm calling backup," and he's like, "Backup," and he's like, "Everyone else does it." And then like they call backup, and it's their first time, and all the cops show up, and they're without their pants and everything.
Right. And then
absolutely just want to point it out. Where's the cap?
The idea that these two guys are like two like hothead, like, young guns who never bring it, like who never call for backup and they never do anything. You really get the sense that they are the Uncle Rico and the other cops. They're some holders.
Right. And I think at one point he's like, "You calling backup?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll call in a SWAT team," when they were trying to break into the ship or whatever. Like, yeah, I'll call a SWAT team. Like this. My
favorite part was when Gregory Hines pretended to be Italian for like a hot minute.
Oh, because that was so funny.
Yeah, you want garlic? You want to make you a marinara? What do you want?
He goes, "You want me to lose a war?" Was one of his comebacks.
Yeah. What do you want me to do? Lose a war?
Lose a war. And then Snake has got a bunch of good ones. When they're trying to find like a crime to pin on him, he's like, I mean, this is might be the most absurd line in the entire movie. When they're trying to like nail him for a crime in the apartment building, he's like, "I'm cleaner than Bambi's ass." I'm like, I guess Bambi's ass is probably pretty clean compared to like a lot of other screen characters' asses. I was like, cleaner than Bambi's ass. Like, all right.
Yeah, Bambi specifically, because Bambi's ass would not be that clean. He's a fucking deer in the woods. He can't.
I know. I would say he's actually an fictional animated character. So
Okay.
you know.
Well, that's a fun argument.
How about when they're at the funeral and they make the sign of the cross and he's got Joey Pants handcuffed and they're doing it together?
Oh
that fucking shit killed me.
I mean, and the idea of a Colombian necktie being brought into a comedy, like that was, I was like, oh man, again.
But the 80s were gritty. The 80s were gritty. You're just coming out of Vietnam. You know, movies like Rambo was getting made. Like, it's still, the 80s had a filth, a grit left over from the 70s. You know what I mean? And as all their, like, you know, everyone was getting flooded with new, like, electronics and shit, you know, it still had the stink of the 70s.
Now, there is, I think, 3 distinct markers that this movie takes place in the Breaking Bad universe, which is a game I like to do sometimes, which is that the guy who fixes their car, like the guy who gives them, like, the taxi, that's
always
the trailer park in Breaking Bad. And, okay, so there's that one. There's, like, 2 more. Oh, wait, I said the Hank and Gomi thing. They just remind me of Hank and Gomi. And then there was, like, a third thing. What was it? There was a third thing that tied this into the Breaking Bad universe, and I'll think about it in a second. But it was just, yeah, I really like that element that, like, there's like just this violence that we're not even seeing because we're on the trajectory of these other 2 cops who, quite honestly, like could give a shit about their job anymore. Like they're trying to actively leave their job. They just keep, like, out of a point of pride, not quitting.
Right. And then he makes it personal when he hijacks his girlfriend. Then it's over with.
I still wonder why he did that, because again, it's not like this guy like wanted to do anything other than just get him off their case, like get him off the case.
Well, he just needed his cocaine back. That's all he needed. And the one person who could deliver that cocaine is Billy Crystal.
Yeah, I love that part where they do the thing where they go and check the money out of the thing. They have to
the prank phone call.
Yeah. Like a lot of this, okay, yeah, a lot of this did remind me of Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, like just in terms of like the not the grift, but like the things they play with each other, you know, like the sort of grifting that goes on that they're trying to do to circumvent like the law or like, you know, the right order of things. They don't want to, you know, to just make the things go their way, go faster.
I never really thought about it that way till you said it, but Jesus, yeah, there are some Breaking Badisms in there.
Breaking Bad's Better Call, because like that's something Saul would do. He would like, or you know, that would be something like Saul would do in Better Call Saul, is like pretend to be his own boss, so they could like go check some money out of a police precinct. You know, have something like that. Right. The thing. Okay, so they get their car.
The tank taxi is pretty dope. You got to admit, like
that was the coolest part.
The tank taxi.
No, the coolest part is when he backed right into the car.
Yeah, those guys are so.
Now it looks like a taxi.
That's a great line. That one looks like
By the way,
taxi.
and how does that work? They're able to get immediately, like, you don't even know, like, if you do this, like, in New York, like, of course, like, you'd be able to, like, get anyone you want because they can just pick up anyone pretending to be a taxi. A taxi is the greatest, I've never thought about this before in this movie. The taxi is the greatest, like, thing that blends into the background that you could use as a police stakeout car. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing in Sherlock Holmes. It's a whole story.
In which one? The TV show?
I know it was actually, I thought it was in the book and then it was adapted for the TV show Sherlock. Remember he picks them up in taxis, people that blend in. You don't think about it, no one's special. The people that blend in.
Oh, that's in the first episode of the TV show, right.
Yeah, is it just in the TV show? I thought it was also in the book. But
the books, they didn't have taxi cabs yet because they were in the 19th century.
Huh.
But they
I gotta get down with that. I hear that's a damn good show.
Out of my head that they had cars.
Is that the BBC?
Yeah, the Sherlock with Benedict.
And that's what's his name, Doctor Strange.
Yep, Doctor Strange is in. So it's the one. It's called
Bad motherfucker.
That guy's hot as hell too.
He'd be good in a buddy cop movie because he's funny as fuck too when he does the comedy. He can whoop some ass.
He'd be good as the bad guy.
A lot of like really funny stuff.
Actually, let's talk about this for a second because I think this movie. I think we were on a good point a little bit earlier when we were saying, you know, who this movie seems like
there aren't enough tank taxis west in Iraq. I agree.
Like, who do you think like would have also been cast in this movie during this time period? I'm not sure if anyone else auditioned for these roles or something, but I was seeing like Kurt Russell, you know, and
you could probably do Eddie Murphy and Kurt Russell.
Well, that's the thing. I don't like the idea of Eddie Murphy being in this movie. And let me tell you why. Because I think he's a great actor. But I feel like what's really great about George Hines' performance is that he's very chill. He's
Oh,
so
yeah.
charismatic,
It's
and it's
great.
very
Oh, Eddie would play
nonchalant.
the Billy role, I would say, though.
Yeah, if it was Eddie Murphy,
Kurt
he
would be
would
the
try
straight
to
man.
be the he would try to be the star, and I feel like that would be a little too much competition.
Yeah, there really is no competition with these two. It's a very symbiotic
Yeah,
performance. They
exactly.
feel like brothers. They
Yeah.
feel like these guys have known
Yeah.
each other
I
20
would-
years.
Exactly. That's why I don't think Eddie Murphy would work
Wouldn't
as
be as
in
strong.
George's.
Well, also like
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy doing the Beverly Hills Cop thing, I think the association would have been very
Yeah.
strong. I also think like we did Blazing Saddles last week, and that was a great, and we were talking about Silver Streak and like Gene Wilder. I think we could have just done the Blazing Saddles duo again.
Just
What was his
It'd be
name?
tough to watch Gene Wilder be a cop. I think that'd be tough. What if you
George
got like
Hines, he was in Mel Brooks's movie History
what
of
if
the
you got
World
like
Part
Roy
One.
Scheider and Richard
I was about
Pryor?
to say, dude, I was about to say Roy Scheider. How'd
Roy
you know?
Scheider and Richard Pryor in these two roles.
Yes, Roy
Richard would be the Billy Crystal role. Scheider
Dude,
would be the
100%. 100% sold on this is Roy Schneider.
I could see Scheider and Richard just owning it together.
Yeah, I could totally.
They're both pretty kind of like tough, strong. What about Richard Dreyfuss? Could be interesting in this role.
What about George Carlin and George Carlin?
Dreyfuss, yeah.
Carlin's an interesting call.
Yeah.
I don't think Carlin ever played a cop.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, he's a time cop or whatever in Bill and Ted.
We should ask Kevin Smith to reboot this franchise. I bet he could have a good field day with it.
Yeah, but
he's got to set it in 1986, though. He can't be trying to do it now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Exactly. Oh.
Or it could be 1985. You could do a prequel.
Do a prequel.
I'm doing a prequel to Running Scared. People would go like, "What? That's such a bold choice."
So actually, let's talk about that for a second, because I know that's sort of what we want to get into. I know Alex had some thoughts as well, and I didn't mean to be like, Alex, let's do this at a later date or a later part of the show, and then totally steal some of your points. I think, but let's let's put it in context. How does this movie sort of work right now? Do you think for you?
Well, so I'll touch back on it. Well, thing is, I think this movie is a very funny movie. So I feel like there's so many pros to this movie. A lot of the pros to this movie, they don't actually relate to the crime aspect. And the thing is, being a cop and everything, and I definitely do understand, like you said, it's a popcorn movie. This is kind of like a fantasy version of Cops.
Yeah,
that's why I had to kind of like when I watch this movie, it's like this alternate reality where this is accepted or expected, and actually scratch that, because the thing is, sadly it is expected in the real world. Obviously, it's definitely this stuff like this happens. Evidence manipulation.
Threatening to deport
random shootouts where they don't need to be.
It's like the Grand Theft Auto of movies. It's on par with that kind of entertainment.
Yeah. Well, thing is, that's why I don't think it ages well. As I messaged a friend of mine specifically when watching it, and thing is, he's Black and he's seen this movie a bunch of times, and he's like, yeah, there's a lot of aspects I love it. Gregory Hines is great. The thing is, this is not a comedy to me. That's what he said. Because and he saw that, and he was in his like preteens or something when he saw this, like preteens, like whatever maybe. And he said, watching this movie, it's there's like a handful of scenes where it's just really uncomfortable for him as a young black man. And he said that a lot of those aspects really, really don't age well, because they don't come off. They play it like a comedic, lighthearted moment, but from his point of view, it didn't feel comedic.
That's interesting.
So I was like, wow, I never thought of it that way, and that makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah,
I didn't see that much. Like I saw a lot of like Latino, kind of like the sort of like gang stuff. I saw like a lot more profiling than I did of like any African American profiling in this film. Got the cop car. Oh my god, when they tag the police car, it's amazing. But to your point, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of scenes in this movie where you're just like, and because it's Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines, and they're doing it in this sort of like camaraderie, like funny bonhomie way. It kind of like sticks out now, where they're just sort of like, yeah, we could just say that you're a rat and just have you like dealt with by the neighbors, or like he's threatening to deport like an old Hispanic lady by saying they're going to call immigration.
Yeah, poor lady.
there's just a lot of this movie where I'm just like, whoa, that's not great. Like, that's not great. It feels weird, like, watching a character do that and then it being, like, sort of like a joking thing.
Mhm.
But, like, I understand that the context is different because they didn't have the issues that we have currently going on right now.
Look, at any given time, I mean, comedy is going to be comedy, and comedians are going to take their shots. Entertainers are going to take their shots. Everyone's going to make, people are going to comment on things, per their trade. You know what I mean? Journalists are expected to look at things one way.
I don't think they do
Comedians
that.
are, look at things one way. Things were made differently, of course, in every generation. It's just the way it is. And so, as long as you look at everything in like this sort of vacuum that is cinema, you know what I mean, and don't take things too seriously, then I think you get through it okay.
I absolutely agree, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think it works because of what it is. Like, movies can't go back. Like we talked about last week with Blazing Saddles, movies can't retroactively go back and change themselves. They're stuck in time. They're static things. They can't go back and like mature or be like, okay, sorry, like we didn't mean to say this. Like, we understand now.
Art shouldn't have to apologize for anything. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this doesn't have anything to apologize for. I don't really think.
Well, I do. I just jumping on what you said. I mean, Kaiser, I mean, you're a comedian, and obviously comedy changes and comedians change, and the way you present stories, the way you kind of look back at experiences, obviously, I mean, as anyone, but obviously as a comedian, it's very different the way you present that story for your shows and everything. I do think that, what?
When did Kaiser start doing comedy? I didn't know that.
Well, look, here's the thing. My hobby. It's a hobby for me. I mean, I used to work at the Comedy Store back in the day, and I'm muted.
No, you're good.
Oh, no, Alex is right. I used to work at the Comedy Store back in the day, and I used to go up on stage during the Friends and Family Monday nights, and then I did a couple shows here and there, and then Ellis put me on a couple shows. I mean, shit, my last stand-up show was in Vegas at the House of Blues with Ellis right before COVID hit. But I'm not like, it's not my career. I do it more as a hobby.
No, I honestly forgot about the Ellis thing. I would love to see you do stand-up, Kaiser. By the way, I didn't mean to derail the conversation. I just forgot that Kaiser did stand-up, and I got really excited. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is, I like you said, film evolves, comedy especially evolves. Comedy is very has a hard time aging compared to a lot of other genres. Has a hard time aging well, just because not only it changes, but new things can pop up. Like. It's still such a struggle knowing that one time like rape jokes were acceptable and and things like that. And things like, and times change, so you kind of have to look through it through those lens. But also I think one of the reasons
I don't think I've ever liked a comedian who told a rape joke. So, but
that's a whole other conversation, of course. But there's in particular though, I think one of the reasons why it does hit as well as it does is because these two are clearly are clearly different. I mean, they have very great chemistry. They feel like brothers in so many awesome ways as partners. They have great chemistry, but also one's a white man and one's a black man, and their dynamic is really great in this movie. And their interaction as cops is very different as well.
Yeah, I think
I don't know how this would have paid well if it was like with two white guys.
I think this movie is like a really, I think Blazing Saddles was a great movie to have watched last week to compare this to, because I think this is like another one of those where it's like the jokes are raunchy. Maybe some of this wouldn't work today, but
have you guys seen Silver Streak?
Not yet.
Maybe we'll do that one next.
But I mean, I do think that there's a lot. I think there's a lot to be like loved about this movie. I didn't mean to make it be like I hated it. I didn't hate it.
I understand where you're coming from.
I think that there's a lot to be like really enjoyed about this movie. I think it's like what it seems to be a little bit about. My issue with this is sort of like the pacing of it. I'm like, okay, so they're going to Key. Like, I didn't know what the movie was about, so I was like, okay, so now they're going to the Florida Keys and they're going to go stay there. It's like
we're going to go to the Keys for a quick montage of everybody just living their best life. But then hold on,
but wait, no, but now they're back in Chicago, and it turns out the Florida Keys was like not really
I could say there's some fragmented aspects to how the story's told for sure.
Or just sort of like, what am I supposed to care about? Am I supposed to care about them wanting to be cops or not wanting? It's almost like what's the
Right.
story here? When they were looking at the sunset, I really thought what was going to happen was they're going to turn out to be cops. They're going to stop being cops. They're going to go open this bar, and the rest of the movie is going to be them dealing with stuff down there.
When I saw that scene, more than anything, it made me realize, just kind of reaffirming what I kind of mentioned earlier, is that they love being cops, yes, but they love being partners more. Like that's their goal. No matter what, they're like, whether it doesn't matter if we're gonna be running a bar or a restaurant together. As long as we're together, we're good. That's we're partners as cops in Chicago.
That's forever. Right.
Exactly.
And it really is a beautiful movie about male friendship, like the kind of male friendship that you don't see a lot, especially not in like male cop movies, that this is sort of like they love each other. They love each other's ex-wives. They're very involved in each other's lives. This isn't like how I know you're gay sort of Judd Apatow moment. This is like, they're like really, they really care for each other.
The chemistry was amazing. I could only imagine when they sat down and did a table read for the first time. The director must have just been fucking almost brought to tears. Like, well, this worked out.
Well, Alex,
I wonder if they did a chemistry test together. Was that like a thing before? Because I know chemistry tests are like.
Think about that. Neither of these guys are exactly just box office stars at the time. Think about it. Like, there's no Stallone here to carry this, or
86? What did Crystal done? He said he did Soap, but like he had done something besides Soap, hadn't he? Or is this is the first thing since Soap?
I mean,
had he done Harry and Sally
this might be the movie that broke him into movies.
That's nuts. Okay,
it might very well. Like I've said, just think of this. Like it's not a popular. I don't think I saw Hines and Billy Crystal on the cover of many 80s posters before 1985. I'm trying to think of a fucking Billy Crystal movie before.
I'm trying to think of it. I was thinking like, is it Harry and Sally?
But like the chat. Start chiming in with pre-85 Billy Crystal movies. I'd be curious to know what they are.
Well, when did Harry and Sally? When did Harry met?
It's got to be 89. I'm gonna guess.
Okay, so you might be right.
Mm-hmm. City Slickers.
City Slickers is probably 90 or 91.
That's 90. No, yeah, that's in the 90s. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you might be right, Kaiser. This might be like the big breakout of the Billy Crystal thing. Gregory Hines. I'm not even sure what Gregory Hines was mostly known for. Again, because I knew him as more of a dancer.
The Cotton Club, was that
he was in This Is Spinal Tap.
Billy Crystal? It would have been just a cameo, though.
It was like a cameo. It's like more than a mind.
There were a lot of cameos in that movie.
This big breakout, yeah.
But before that, Rob Reiner had put him in a bunch of movies. So like Rob Reiner would put him in The Princess Bride and all this stuff. He was also wasn't he an SNL guy?
Yeah, for a little while.
Yeah,
for
a couple seasons.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean that's crazy to think, and these guys just hit a freaking home run as far as chemistry, dynamic. It's a fun movie.
I kind of want to read. Alex, you have your information handy. I know you said you looked up a couple things about this movie. I do kind of want to hear about like the backstory. Maybe I can take a second and try to find it.
I don't know much history on this movie at all. That's one thing I did not do.
Yeah, I should have done this before the show, but
I mean, I had enough time just to watch it, jot some notes down in between, making reality television.
What do you think the title "Running Scared" is even a reference to? That was my first question too. I was like, are they running scared? What is running scared in this movie? They're
making other people run scared.
Are they?
I feel like everyone running scared.
Okay, okay. So I got it up.
Running away from them the entire time. Like they do not want to be near that guy.
Right.
Okay, so guys, I have the production here. So Hines later recalled in 2010 he wanted to remain earthbound. MGM came to him with a script about two elderly cops in New York who want to retire to the director. He said he wanted to make about two younger cops who did not retire, and so they were they were fighting over that for a while. There were a lot of cop movies around the time, so I decided it would be interesting if I needed to do it with two actors you would normally not expect to see in an action movie. So I wanted Billy Crystal and Gregory Hines, and I got them. Hines did an amazing story with Hames, blah, blah. I just campaigned until I got it to Hines. And I'm proud because this is the first film that stars a black guy and a white guy. And the black guy has all the sex scenes. Of course, the part was usually played by a white guy. Usually the black guy has no sexuality at all. Let's see. He felt, so I'm trying to see it. Reviews were mixed. People like Ebert said that it transcends its dreary roots and turns out to be a lot of fun. So people seem to like this movie. I do like want to know. Like, I'm trying to figure out what else Billy Crystal was in during this time period because it sounds like he was more famous.
He didn't do a lot of movies. He was only in
Princess
he
Bride
was
was next year. Yeah.
Yeah, he
So
didn't do many movies.
is that his
In the
leap
90s,
from?
he did quite a
Is
bit,
that his
though.
leap from the TV
Yeah.
show Soap, and then he goes right to this?
Yeah, you're right.
That's fucking unreal. If that's
No, he does the movie. He does the Rabbit Test, and he does SNL.
who?
That was
Rabbit
his debut,
Test.
his like,
Rabbit
movie
Test.
debut.
What the fuck is that?
Rabbit Test I actually saw a while ago. It's this it's a Joan Rivers movie.
Huh.
It's a Joan Rivers movie.
I love Joan Rivers. I didn't know she made any
it.
movies.
So
Yeah,
it's the
Have you
plot
seen
of
the
movie
Joan
is
Rivers
aligned with
documentary?
Yeah, she's amazing.
Have you guys seen the Joan Rivers documentary?
She's
No, I have not.
she's so
She's got
like,
such an interesting life, though.
you know what? She's the
She's a
kind of person,
monster.
if she was alive today, she would totally be a Trump person. Like, so I'm glad. The part of me is glad that like absolutely.
Oh
Like, 'cause
my
she was
gosh.
that kind of crazy in a little bit in those certain ways, but I also think she was hilarious, and I'm glad that like her legacy doesn't have to involve that.
She was a master.
She was incredible. She should have gotten
a
the
lot for women in comedy. I mean, just like for women entertainers. In
Hell
general.
yeah, her and Pryor came up together in the same Greenwich Village comedy joint.
It's kind of fucked up that she didn't get the Late Show. Like it was kind of fucked up that they had her
Right.
blackballed.
Well, they gave her that Fox show that she had for a minute.
Yeah, but Kaiser, like I want to, because we're kind of wrapping things up here a little bit, but in the pantheon of movies that you watched, I guess as a kid, or when did you said you saw this movie for the first time when you were how old?
11, 12.
11? So did you go with your parents? Did you see it with friends?
No, my buddy Mike Pachotti, we call him Pachotti for short, Sicilian kid. His Uncle Jack owned a video store.
Mm-hmm.
So there would always be stacks of VHSs laying around his house. Mm-hmm. And we watched everything, all the movies we shouldn't have been watching. Rambo, Apocalypse Now, like that's a mind-blowing movie for a 12-year-old. Like once they got out of the first half of that movie, I didn't know what the fuck was going on until I got to, high school and I figured it out. But like, yeah, we used to watch DC Cab. I mean, there was nothing we couldn't watch, I feel, as a kid. I remember my dad trying to tell me I couldn't watch Eddie Murphy Raw on HBO. And I'm thinking, I watch all these movies, or sorry, not Eddie Murphy Raw, Eddie Murphy Delirious, his first comedy special. And so I remember hiding my Fisher Price boombox behind the TV and I hit record on a Maxell tape. And then I came back the next morning, I snagged it, and I got like the first 40 minutes until the tape blew out. But like,
that's amazing.
We shit like that. For some reason, that's where he drew the line, I guess, me watching Eddie Murphy's Delirious. But like, I remember these movies were very readily available to us as kids. I mean, we had other friends who owned video stores. So yeah, I remember seeing everything. The Rocky movies were a big deal when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
Red Dawn. I remember seeing all that shit in the theater. We had a movie theater that we could ride our bikes to as kids, which was it was called Cine 8 theaters. So we buy a ticket. What's that?
Did they card? Were you able to get into what
we would do is we buy a ticket to Big and then sneak into Die Hard. Like that's how we saw a lot of rated R movies in the theater. So, these movies have always been a part. My dad loved all these kinds of movies. So that's probably where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is one of my earliest memories of my dad watching a movie that he was bowled over by. And that would turn out to be one of the most influential movies in my lifetime. And especially trying to be a writer.
I really need to see it. I have not seen Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. I know it's William Goldman. I know it's the Princess Bride guy. I know that it's supposed to be one of the best, and I'm going to watch.
Who you should bring on for that? Bring on Ben Bateman to talk about that movie. He'd be a great one.
As now he's part of the dungeon. Yeah, let's see if he'll come on. He did do a nice video for the Warriors. He came on and he left a video for us that was really nice. But
really? He's a huge fan of that film.
I grew up also with friends that owned like a video store, and like my parents just did not give a shit. Like my parents gave the opposite of a shit about what they wanted us to watch the weirdest films possible. Like just really upsetting. Like we watched one of our house favorites was Welcome to the Dollhouse. That my parents loved.
Movie. Oh yeah, the people under the stairs. That was a weird fucking movie.
Wes Craven, yeah. We watched a lot of that.
And I'm like, dude, I shouldn't be watching this shit,
We watched a lot of
I
like
saw
Let's
Children of the Corner and I was like 8, but I loved
Creepy,
it.
creepy. To
Yeah, we
answer
watched a lot of-
NerdChronic, yes, I absolutely had like DC Cab, Red Heat, and fucking Beverly Hills Cop on the same tape.
Well, that's what I'm kind of curious about. Because we're gonna be wrapping things up very soon. But Kaiser, just like, can you list like one or two like father-son movies that you remember your dad introducing you to that you kind of bonded over?
Definitely. There's one movie that stands out is The Dirty Dozen. Like
Yes.
I've watched that movie probably 6 times with my dad. Every time it came on, that was the one. Kelly's Heroes would be another one. It was always involved a ragtag group of fucking, guys getting together to plan a heist. I mean, he had a great sense of comedy. My dad had a lot of Carlin records and Pryor records, and I would, listen to that shit when I was a kid. And so he loved those kinds of people on screen. And, whenever he would lose at the racetrack, there was only either 2 places to go. It was McDonald's or the movies. So, he usually had enough money in his pocket to take me. But like with I would have never seen Dirty Dozen in the theater with him, but we'd watch that on television all the time. God, there's a few others on. Oh, he loved fucking Shawshank. And then,
Of course.
yeah, especially when I got to work with Morgan for 5 years and become, close with Morgan Freeman. That shit always blew him out of the water because he's a huge Clint Eastwood fan. I remember watching every Dirty Harry movie ever with my dad. Anything made by Don Siegel from 1977 to 1984, I've seen. The first Dirty Harry. So those are the movies my dad watched. He was a dude.
So me and my dad, I would be Mystery Science Theater movies. So like maybe the Mystery Science Theater movie, but probably the one Man Knows Hands of Fate. It would probably be Being John Malkovich, Blue Velvet, and the
father-daughter movie.
What?
That's a father-daughter movie.
Really not. We just love it. Let's see what else. Like we liked watching together. We like watching like really weird. Like he really liked early Ryan Johnson. He was like onto Brick before anyone else was. He was. Yeah. I have a really cool dad. So
Brick in the theater.
Yeah, so Brick was really good. Velvet Goldmine, we loved watching as a kid. He loved that.
I had to wait to date that really cool chick who introduced me to Lynch and Twin Peaks and all that shit. And so,
and then Twin Peaks,
then I saw The Elephant Man. It's one of the 3 movies I can name offhand that makes me cry every time I see it.
We just watched it. My God,
fucking movie breaks my heart every time, man.
Man, that movie is so un-Lynchian, but I love it so much. Like it was
so heavy, so heavy.
So Kaiser, now that you've heard our sort of biases and you've now seen the kind of reaction that we had to this kind of movie, if we were to expand, if me and Alex needed to expand our worldview a little bit more, what other movies would you recommend in this vein that we need to see? I mean, I know Butch Cassidy just came up.
Have you guys seen Midnight Run?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely 100% Midnight Run first. 48 Hours, if you haven't seen it, it's way grittier than this, so you may not like that aspect. If you had a trouble balancing the comedy and the violence and all that shit in this, then you're really going to have something to say about 48 Hours. But I feel like 48 Hours is the best buddy cop movie of all time, period. I mean, for me, best buddy movies are probably Butch Sundance and the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, for sure. And 48 Hours would be my 2 favorite buddy movies, whether they're buddy cops or buddy cowboys or buddy whatever the fuck, But I think Midnight Run has got a little bit more heart, so I'd go for that one first.
I need to watch Butch Cassidy. I need to watch Tango and Cash. I guess I just need to watch movies where guys are friends, and that's like the movie. Like that needs to be the thing I do. Like,
have you ever seen the fucking Last Detail with Jack Nicholson and
that era
Randy Quaid?
No, I love that. Wait, what year was that?
Holy fuck, Drew! You of all people would love this movie.
I do love.
I'm gonna guess the Last Details, maybe 77. God, I wish I knew who directed. I don't think that was a Walter Hill movie, but it was someone like that.
That sounds like something I like. That's the era.
What's the movie called again?
Somebody Google The Last Detail. Drew, I promise you'll fucking think.
Hold on, we got a super chat. The Last Detail.
The Last Detail.
Super chat in from Chris Rackin saying, saw my Mumford and shirt from when I was 11. Axel
Oh yeah.
Need to get
gosh.
Axel Foley. That movie still makes me laugh.
It
No
is
matter
directed by
Hal
Hal
Ashby. That's right. Hal Ashby, who did Being.
Hal Ashby. He did In the Heat of the Night. Harold and Maude. He did Harold and Maude.
Yeah, Hal Ashby.
Hal Ashby was one of the best filmmakers. Being There's another one that damn near breaks my heart.
Shampoo. He did Shampoo.
Drew, I want to get your review on Last Detail. I would love to hear your fucking take on
We're gonna put Last Detail on the list then, because because it's not that I don't like movies that don't like that balance violence and comedy. I love those movies. I think my biggest issue is like when those movies are from the cops' perspective and the cops are supposed to be the good guys, and it's like
no, Drew. The thing about Last Detail, it's more like theater. It's not like this, but it's a violent world without the violence. Like it's just if you know what I'm violence the wrong term. It's an aggressive world. There isn't a lot of violence. It's an interesting take. It's an interesting look at the 70s, late 60s.
I do like the Captain stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting fucking film. Very interesting.
And when Nicholson, when he was a screenwriter, when he was palling around and doing, like when he was doing, not American Free, the one on the bicycles. Motorcycles when with him and Fonda and
Easy Rider.
That's like in the Trip. He was directing the Trip, and I mean, it's just when he was doing that Monty Hellman movie. Like those were the ultimate Jack Nicholson years for me.
Oh,
you're gonna love The Last Detail. I'll tell you.
Okay,
it's an interesting flick. So, this was fun. This is fun. I definitely would love to come back sometime and do another movie with you guys.
Maybe you'll do Twin Peaks next time.
Holy shit.
Make her watch Fire Walk with me. I made her watch Blue Velvet once. Great. With her.
Fuck, man. Everyone will be lost, but we can do it. We can talk about it.
So I do want to say before we go, though, we do have our movie for next week, and we do have kind of an exciting announcement for the next week of films, or the next month of films. We are doing we're doing all black films, black movies, black cinema.
All next week. Do you do this show once a week?
For the entire month of February.
You do this show once a week?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you're doing black cinema. Okay, what films are you doing?
So next week we have our first ever double feature. We are doing Dolomite Is My Name along with one of the original Dolomite films. I don't know exactly which one yet. If we're gonna take a see which film is the best one to go with. But
Dolomite Is My Name was a little overrated. It felt like a Saturday Night Live sketch to me. But I do love the old Rudy Ray Moore Dolomite films. I mean, I'm a huge fan of that period of cinema.
Wait, you didn't like the writing in Dolomite Is My Name? It's the same people who did the Jay and Ed Wood. You'll like it, Alex, because it's the Ed Wood writer.
Ed Wood is one of my top 6 movies of all time.
We just did that one. Alex had never seen it. It's one of my top movies of all time too. But it's the same writers, Larry Kaczynski and.
I love that fucking movie.
Yeah.
Are you guys putting Superfly on the list?
Yep.
See, I told you.
You're right. Alex is right. So yes, we are putting Superfly on the list.
You have some problems with that one if you had some problems with this one.
But I wasn't sure if it's considered like too niche, like because
dude, Ron O'Neal gives a really great performance as the pimp. I'm such an idiot. Why I can't remember his name. It's Priest. His name is Priest. The character's there.
I definitely want to see that. We have we are deciding between the rest of them. We'll probably put some polls up asking you guys what you think we should watch and sort of seeing if we can have some guests on and discuss this stuff, because it's of course it's both of our sort of blind spots, not to our
Boys in the Hood might be one of the greatest movies of all time. You should if you're celebrating African American actors.
Yeah.
That could be one of that might be is that movie 1990 did it come out?
I thought it was 91.
91? Okay. So you're talking Boys in the Hood, Pulp Fiction, Boogie Nights, probably the top 3 movies to come out of the 90s.
No. There was I just did a thing on this, Kaiser. There were so many good movies.
I would have put in number 4.
Friday was in the 90s.
Not as good as the 4 movies I mentioned.
Yeah. That's a good one.
You got a top. Wait.
1994 alone, there were so many good movies.
Is Goodfellas 89 or 90?
Yeah, 90, I think. But no, won the Oscar in 90, so it might have been 89.
No, I think it came out. I think it won. It didn't win Best Picture.
No, you're right. It didn't win Best Picture.
It was nominated, and I think it was 90. So now you got Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, Boogie Nights.
Didn't it win Best Picture? I thought it did win.
No way.
Best supporting actor. Oh, so yeah, right. So it got best supporting. It came out in 1990.
90,
Yep.
yeah. So you got Boys in the Hood, Goodfellas, Pulp, Boogie Nights.
Pulp.
Top 4 all
That's a
time
lot.
of
That's
the
a
90s.
lot of crime movies right there.
Top 4 of the 90s. What are you going to put in there? The piano? I mean, all right. I'll hear you out.
I love the
Let's throw the piano in there,
I
whatever.
love the piano so much. I can't put
I'm
into
a
What
big-
words
about
how much
Batman?
movie.
What about
Who?
what about Batman? What about
Batman. What Batman?
Batman
You mean like the
Returns.
Tim Burton Batman?
the Tim Burton Batman?
That ain't as good as the 4 movies I just named.
Fair
It's
enough. I mean,
definitely
maybe.
one of the popular movies though of that time
Not-
of the year.
What about Terminator?
Isn't that 89? That came out in 90?
Sorry,
Oh, T2.
Terminator.
T2?
The sequel came out in 91, 92, I think.
Okay, I'd put that number 5 right below Ed Wood.
What about
That's
Heat?
another movie I've not seen.
I'm not a huge Heat fan, but I understand the love for it.
What about the fact that Ed Wood came out in the 90s?
I put that number 4.
Oh, you put that at number 4?
Or no,
What
that's
about
number
Face
5.
Off?
Number 5.
What about all the Nick Cage ones? What about the 3 Nick Cage Beige Volvo trilogies? Face
I
Off,
don't-
Con Air, and The Rock?
I don't
No.
give much of a shit about those movies. I'm not saying they're bad. I just don't.
It's
Yeah.
a very. I saw Face Off.
Yeah, I got no interest in seeing that ever again.
Hated it.
I got no interest in seeing probably any Nick Cage movie except for Raising Arizona.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
I
Nick Cage
mean,
God.
maybe the Lynch one, of course.
Wait, what about Mandy?
Replace Sailor.
What Wild at Heart? Great
Wild
film.
at Heart.
What about Vampire's Kiss? I mean, Nick Cage is one of my favorites, Kaiser.
I
This is
do
very
like
upsetting.
being, or no, not being John Malkovich.
Adaptation.
Adaptation. That's a good one.
What about the one he's in with Brendan Meyer? It's Color Out of Space. So good. Like
Who?
his Brendan Meyer, the kid, like the guy from.
I haven't seen that yet. That looks
Yeah,
interesting.
he plays Nicolas Cage's son
And
in
I
this.
didn't see that
Mandy.
that horror movie that everyone wanted me to go see.
Mandy's
What is it? Yeah,
Mandy.
I gotta see that.
Nick Cage.
I didn't say all his movies, just a lot of them.
Hold up. Do you not like National Treasure?
I mean, it's okay. It was.
Never
I don't need to ever see it again.
Sure. He doesn't like. No, we gotta cut this short. And Kaiser.
Okay,
can-
right. We've got.
I've seen it.
I can't do this.
Go watch The Last Detail and then tell me something.
Kaiser, we do want to say though, because we have kept you now for an hour and a half, which is a little bit longer than we keep most people. Do you have anything that you want to plug, or anything that you want to shout out? I know we have some big stuff coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I guess I'll plug the dungeon and the dungeon. That's all I'm plugging is the dungeon.
So we of course you can't talk that much. I watched your interview with Roxy early last night, and clearly you got some ideas in terms of draft. But you've been looking at any of these rookies? You got some ideas?
There's some people out there who I really like. I
David?
probably listen. I didn't really say too much on Roxy's show,
You didn't know.
other than I think Roxy and I have spoken a little bit behind closed doors about draft theory. I don't do that with a lot of people, but we just happened to fall in the conversation one day, and so I try and play it tight to the vest. Drew, you know that better than anybody. I don't like creating false illusions, and I don't like putting anything out there. It's all done when the person's name is on the dotted line and it's all in stone. Until then, it's all just speculation. There's some talented. I don't think we'll ever. I'll put it to you this way: I don't think we will ever see this talented a rookie class in the Schmoedown for a long time. Maybe in 5 years, but there's way too many. There's way too many people in there who look at Frank's draft board. Whether you want to argue about it or not, or you got something to say, I think Frank did a good job of getting everybody on that board.
Mm-hmm.
In a relative, you can argue with groupings, but you're only talking about
I'm not
moving.
arguing at all for that draft.
You shouldn't be. You should probably be number 1 on the list, to be honest with you.
I made the top 10. I was very happy.
I think you should be number 1 on that list. So, and I'm not just saying that. So that said, I think Frank's got everybody out there. And look, there's people beyond that list that are still available. I mean, it's crazy. I think we're going to, since we have this opportunity.
You have the number one pick, so let's see.
Have the number one pick. Should be running. I should make that their team name, Running Scared. But then they'll turn it around on me, and it'll be like Bateman and Merle are Running Scared. I mean, but to go back to what I was saying, it's too deep this year. So
yeah.
And I'm sorry, I remember what I was going to say. Because majority of this season will likely be played online. It feeds that sort of system of having more people available to play, and then Christian being able to have more matches per week. It's going to give more people an opportunity. You may not see that the season after next or the season after next if it goes back into a live only or whatever. I mean, to be determined. All we can do is worry about 2021. It's a whole new year. There's going to be a lot of changes, and it's hard to talk about. Let's be real. I mean, I got family in the dungeon, and some of those people aren't going to be with me next year. They'll always be my friends. I'll always root for them.
I was thinking what's going to happen with our text chain. I was going to send something on Friday morning being like, hey, guys, nice, like.
We will always be able to get on tech streams and talk movies. I mean.
I love it.
Hey, look, a fucking prime example of it is Paul Oyama. I love talking movies with that guy. When it comes time to get in the ring, I hope we beat the shit out of him. And so that's kind of,
It'll be like the reversal of the time that Paul was on your team of when they were the loose cannons, and I was on the other side of that. Had to deal with Kaiser's wrath.
Yeah, that was a fun match. That was the beginning of me courting you to come play for us.
I was so mad.
Then.
It was hilarious.
You gave me a hug after the match. So how bad?
Give you a hug. But I was so mad at you.
So funny. That was my favorite part of the match, was the hug. So
yeah, that became my standard thing. It's been sad not being able to give people hugs, but maybe when we get back.
I know.
So anything else? I know you do the show with Gucci. You want to plug?
We'll probably do a late night with Gucci and Kaiser this week. It'll probably be more of a post-draft kind of hang. I'm sure Tom will bring on some of the guys and girls he drafted. Maybe I'll bring on some of the guys and girls I draft, and you'll see that late night show will be kind of a fallout from the draft, if you will. Like, I don't know. Honestly, I wish it was all over. I really do. I wish I didn't have to go through free agency and a fucking draft and all that shit. But I'm trying to find the fun in it all, because I realize I know I'm not going to get everybody back who I want.
Yeah.
And that's brutal truth.
Yeah, and look, it's hard. It's hard to be dealing with the draft stuff. I mean, honestly, it's I don't know why this year I'm just like, oh my god, it makes my tummy hurt to like think about it. But it will all be over after Friday, one way or another. So
I mean, look, I'm a lucky dude. I got getting a chance to manage the greatest of all time, a real fucking film theorist, and Dan Merle, and having conversations with him is great. He's a fucking unique man, and crazy ass Ben Bateman, who loves hair metal as much as I do. He's a buddy, and so I feel lucky to be able to roll with those guys this year. And obviously Parker's one of my fucking nearest and dearest, so having that boy back, and that's going to be fun. So we're gonna have a good run.
Can I make one request as a fan, and then we'll get to our plugs. But make Merle do like one of his characters, because he has some really good characters.
He was great, when he came on and said he's going to make everyone's season a nightmare.
So good. And I remember him doing like,
I'm going to ruin everybody's season. I'm like, attaboy.
So good. I really just want Dan to lean into like doing, because he can do weird character work, and I would just love to see that.
No, Dan is a foul mouth dude.
Yeah.
Like, I'll tell you, get Dan hyped up, and he's like, this motherfucker. I'm like, holy shit. Like, I feel like I'm on a helicopter in Vietnam with this dude, and we're going to get dropped on the front lines. Like, I'll tell you, he makes me laugh, dude. He makes me laugh. He's a funny dude. And I'll tell you, if you're not watching his show, All My Movies, I don't know what you're doing. Before I drafted him, I said it was my favorite show on television. Like, All My Movies is the equivalent of going to a bar and just ordering a beer and talking movies with your buddy. That's what and somehow it feels like film theory, but very informally. Like, he's just great at what he does, man.
If you have never seen his character Scoops McGee from the Screen Junkies show, which
I heard about, someone mentioned that to me, and I don't know that.
Oh my god, it's amazing! It's a send up of definitely somebody that's in the Schmoedown.
Oh, I gotta see this shit. Someone send me a link, man.
I will send you a link. But guys, Alex, where can we find you? Moving this along.
here up on Twitter at real_Alex Mike. You can also find me hosting Schmoebates every other week with the Cold Action podcast. Yeah, Schmoebates is my Schmoedown themed debate show, and I'm actually in the process of getting Merle and Mark Knopic to come on and debate. So,
Oh boy.
Woo, nice. And what is that for next week, or is that for this week?
it's going to be for next week. Yeah.
Awesome. Guys, you know me, you love me, or if not, you just really like to see Kaiser and Alex, and that's okay too. This is my
It
channel.
works.
Please like and subscribe to it. Please join up to the Patreon. We've had a bunch of new people joining up because we've just rearranged the tiers to make it more accessible for everyone, where you can come on Cinema Bias, where you can come on the VideoChronic pop culture quizzes, which we do twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. This Thursday, we are doing Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff coming up. And then we have some stuff coming up next week, including next Thursdays, we're doing The Last Action Hero. We might have to start auctioning off tickets to that one because everyone wants it. So yeah, we have a bunch of fun stuff coming up. Tuesdays, Cinema Bias here at 8 p.m. Then I've been doing study sessions on Wednesdays. Sundays, I do Live in the Dark with VideoDrew. I don't have a guest right now for this week because we have to kind of figure out what we're going to talk about after the draft. But it's going to be my in kayfabe, sort of Between Two Ferns meets Space Ghost kind of weird character show that's a late night talk show. So that's been really fun to do. And then you were on it, Kaiser.
I'll have to come on again. I've been on it?
You've been on it. That's when we got drunk and we auctioned off stuff we owned.
Oh man, I love that show. I mean, to me, one show's the same show. Whatever you ask me to come on, it all feels like the same show, different topic.
Yeah, and then let's see, and then I've just been on Twitch a lot more, so just find me over there. But otherwise,
what I like about this show is that it gives us one thing to kind of talk about and focus on, and we can kind of diverge from there. But and you know, obviously you guys take the shit seriously, and you're really good at pointing this, guiding this ship. So I do love coming on this show. We'd be happy to do it again whenever.
Awesome, guys.
When you do Italian, when you celebrate Italian cinema, you call me.
That's what Billy Crystal was supposed to be Italian in this movie. We'll
do a Michelangelo Antonioni film. Okay, we'll go into
when we do Cassavetes,
modern Italian cinema. De Sica, call me.
You want to do Bertolucci and Rossellini? You want to
do we should do The Bicycle Thief, which could be the most touching movie of all time. Have either of you seen The Bicycle Thief?
Of course.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Okay. Have you seen? I don't know.
100 Blows.
Yes.
Paradiso.
What, Last Emperor? Okay.
Fettuccine Alfredo.
What? Which one?
Fettuccine Alfredo. It's
Fettuccine Alfredo, which is
spaghetti western.
The spaghetti
western. Stupid fucking joke.
That's the dumbest joke ever.
Dumb fuck joke. All right.
The original Suspiria.
I've never seen that.
But guys,
never seen Suspiria.
But guys, this has been Cinema Bias. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, we'll have them back on to do Suspiria. But guys, this has been Cinema Bias. Thanks for joining us. This has been John Kaiser. Thank you for coming, John. This has been Alex Mack and myself, VideoDrew, saying goodbye, and we will see you very soon. Suspiria.